Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix. Welcome to Classy Movie Rambles, where I talk about all movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is 2001, A Space Odyssey, and it's a philosophical sci-fi adventure from 1968, and it's about 2 hours and 22 minutes long. And the movie starts with a sun rising over a planet, and this is basically the dawn of man. So we follow a group of apes. They are gathering food, looking for food, and they get attacked by a big cat, and one of the members are killed. And later they go down to like a water pond. It's like a little water reserve, and they drink water, and they get chased away by another group of apes, and they take like shelter in like a quarry. And the next morning when they wake up, there is this big monolith next to them, and they get freaked out and confused about this, and they're a bit afraid of it, but one of them actually touches it, and they aren't afraid of it anymore. And a bit later, one of the ape realizes that he can make tools from dead animal bones, and I think he instructed some of his friends, and they go back to the water pond, and they basically kill one of the other apes and retake the water hole. And this is the beginning of the movie. And then cutting to a spaceship moving really slow. There's like a docking sequence, and there's this classical music that plays over it. And I think this is one of the parts of the trailer that everyone has seen, even if they haven't seen the movie. It's like this really slow spaceship landing. And one of the members, Dr. Floyd, he lands on this space station, which they were docking on anyway. And he calls up his daughter. He actually wanted to talk to his wife, but she isn't there. She's in the bathroom. So he congrats his daughter on her birthday, because the next day she's supposed to, have a birthday. And he is there because of a reason. There's this project called the Clavius Project, and he's not allowed to talk about it with the other personnel on the space station. So there are only like rumors about what actually is happening. So there's like... He sits down with a group of people, and they kind of ask him kind of how things are going and whatnot, and they actually ask about the Clavius Project. Is this like a plague or what is it? And he is not allowed to discuss it. So right off the bat we know something is not correct about this. So what happens is Floyd goes out, and he takes a trip with like another spaceship, and they get some space food, and the pilot gets some space food as well. And there's like a funny scene where he's eating food, but he needs to go to the bathroom, and there's like 0G. So there's like this funny sign on the bathroom, how to poop in 0G, and I thought that was kind of funny. So later there's a meeting about the Clavius Project behind closed doors. And they talk about the cover-up story about the plague, because there is not a plague. So Dr. Floyd goes with a group of other scientists to the moon, and basically they go to a dig site where they find the same or a similar monolith to the opening prologue scene. And they go down into this dig site, down the dig, and ominous music is playing. And they touch the monolith, and they take photos of themselves, posing in front of it. But then there is a loud sound, and cutting to like a black screen with white text, Jupiter mission 18 months later. And there is a spaceship again floating in space, and there's this astronaut jogging like on a treadmill. He's basically jogging around the side of the vessel. So there's zero gravity, so he can do that for some reason. So he's basically jogging. So there are two crewmen on board his ship that are awakened, and there's this online kind of AI called HAL 9000 that's basically running the ship. And so one of the crewmen, Frank, it's his birthday, right? I think this is a running kind of occurrence throughout the movie. And one of the crewmates plays chess with Hal, and of course they lose to Hal because he's super intelligent. And Hal asks Dave a question about the mission and about the security and all that, about the mission status. And there's something being big going on. But there's like this thing about this movie that becomes kind of obvious at the end, but I will not spoil it. So Hal kind of points out that there's a problem with like a satellite relay or something, and if it isn't fixed within 72 hours, there will be a critical failure. So Dave and Hal, I think, no, not Dave and Frank. I mean, I was thinking about Metal Gear Solid, but Dave and Frank goes into spacesuits and go into this pod kind of thing, and I think it is Frank. It doesn't really matter who it is, but one of the crewmen goes out, floats out to the satellite dish and checks the kind of component. He kind of brings it and he floats out there to the satellite dish, basically. And then cutting back to the spaceship where they examine the broken part, and they realize that the part is not broken. So Hal kind of blames it to be a human error because he is an AI. He has never been wrong in anything or anything that he has said before. So he suggests that they go back to the satellite dish and put the part back again. Maybe they find out what's actually going on. So Frank and Dave goes into one of the pods to discuss without the AI actually hearing what they say. So they close the door and they mute the pod. And they talk about if they can trust Dave, basically, or not, Hal, the intelligence, if they can trust him. And they think they're being muted, and they are, but cutting to the camera of Hal, he can actually look at their lips and read what they actually are saying. He's kind of smart, this AI. He's rooted to the ship, by the way. He's like this red kind of light. And what happens is that Frank goes out to basically put the part back again into the satellite dish or the relay or whatever. And what happens is that you see on the camera feed that Frank is flung out into the air by an unknown force, and this is Dave or Hal actually using the pod, just thrust him out into the space because he has realized that they want to shut him down and he doesn't want that. So he kind of takes things into his own hands, and this is kind of a scary part. So Dave doesn't know what's happening. He's acting on it. So he gets into one of the pods. He puts on a spacesuit or whatever. He goes out there, and he basically goes to rescue Frank, and he catches him. But I think at this point Frank is dead because he snapped his oxygen kind of cable thing, and he goes. So Dave goes back to the ship, and he asks Hal to open the emergency door or the door. And Hal says, I can't let you do that, Dave. And then he realized that the machine knows exactly what they were talking about in the pod. So he just says to Dave, I'm going through the emergency entrance, Dave. And Hal is kind of smart, this machine. So he says to Dave, like, well, how would you do that without your space helmet? So he rigs it up so Dave rigs up. He lets loose of like Frank lift and drift into space, and Dave kind of pulls himself right in front of the entrance, and he opens up the door. So he has to like fly in for a brief couple of seconds and fly into the airlock and depressurize it and get into the spacecraft again, which he does, and he managed to survive and everything. And he goes into the station, and Hal kind of says like that he's sorry about everything, and we can sort this out. It was just a minor malfunction on my part, but Davis had enough of it, so he crawls into like the main part of his memory bank, and he starts to pull out his memory chips. Well, he actually screws them out, and Hal says to Dave that he's scared. He doesn't know what's happening. He's losing himself and whatnot. And he kind of loses more and more, and he gets slower, and the AI can't kind of talk properly, and he goes back to his default voice, and he kind of says like, do you want to hear a song? And I'm sure Hal, sing me a song. And this is kind of a sad moment because he sings like some song about a girl named Daisy, and the machine kind of slowly dies, when this message is like played out, when the machine is shut down, a message plays that would actually played when there was supposed to be arriving at Jupiter about the briefing mission. There's like a briefing mission, and there's actually a black monolith at that place. So one thing I forgot to tell was that Hal also killed the remaining crewmen that are in cryostasis, so he's not innocent at all, in fact. So the spaceship and Dave arrives at Jupiter, and the black monolith is floating in space. So Dave goes out in one of the pods and interacts with the monolith. And he gets put through like a tunnel of light and landscapes and colors, and it gets all stretched and all weird. And it's a very weird kind of visual, actually. I will imagine if you take drugs or some heavy kind of narcotics, this is what happens. I don't know, it's a cool effect, and it's in the trailer and everything. I think everybody has seen it. So Dave finds himself in like a modern kind of... It's like a modern design but with like... old kind of furniture, and he looks out the pod window and he sees himself in the space suit, and he's a lot older now, and all of a sudden he is himself out of the pod, and he's looking around, and he sees like himself again, the black figure that's eating food, and he kind of turns and looks back, but there's no one there, and he is himself a little bit older eating food. And this is like a representation of life or something. And he eats his food, and he drops a glass on the floor, and he looks to the right or left, and he sees a man lying in the bed. And he realized that he himself is in the bed now. He is this old dying man in the bed. And the old dying man, Dave, he looks up and he sees the monolith in front of the bed, and he interacts with it. And all of a sudden, Dave is transferred out in space, and he sees like a sunrise and over a planet, but now he's a fetus, like an unborn baby. And it was really weird. So what do I think about this movie? I think it's really slow paced, and it's like 2 hours and 22 minutes long. You could have cut out so much of this movie. I bet you could have done it like in 1 hour, actually, because of all the things that happen, and because all the visuals from the beginning of the movie, when they show how man actually developed from ape into man, and the space mission and this docking sequence, and you could have cut out the middle intermission, everything. Maybe like 1 hour movie, but it's actually in the cut. It's kind of brilliant. Slow pace, yes, but it builds on the suspense, and the shots of like the spaceships and the space stations and planets, and the effect with going into this weird trip at the end of the movie, and all these kind of visuals. I like the set design too, because they put a lot of time with like they had moving rooms and with cameras that were standing still, so the room is spinning but the camera is still, so you think that it's 0G, and the effect on the spaceship when things are supposed to be in 0G. There's like in the beginning of the movie, there's like a floating pen in one of the spaceships. Excuse me, and one of the stewardess actually picks it up. It's really well done for this time frame. Remember that this was in like 1968 or something. It's like how you would imagine space travel to look like. But I don't think I can recommend this movie. But you know, I mean, it was a chill movie to watch, and it wasn't that hard to make a review of. So in that regard, it was a 10 out of 10. But I can't recommend this to anyone, really. So anyway, thanks for listening and or watching, and take care.